Pranam, welcome everybody. Let's start the class with prayers. Namo Arihantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Vatsayanam, Namo Loe Sabbasahunam, Eso Panchanamukkaro Sabba Pava Panasano, Manglanancha Sabvesim Padmam, Havai Mangalam. Veera Sarvasura Surendra Mahito, Virambudha Sansrita. वीरेणाभियत स्वकर्मनिचयो वीराय नित्यं नमः वीरातीर्थमिदं प्रौतमतुलं वीरशुघोरं तपो वीरे श्रीधृतिकीर्तिकान्तिनिचय श्रीवीरभद्रं दिश अंगूठे अमृतवसे लपति तणा भंडार श्री गुरु गौतम समरिये मनवांछित फलदातार. We are on week 9 today, and we will be discussing in very briefly the meaning of Naukar mantra. And I think most of you have heard the Naukar mantra song that we hear at the beginning of each class, Samaro Mantra Balo Navakar, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. And in short, the meaning of Naukar mantra and its benefits are incorporated in the verses of that song. All Jains would have heard Naukar mantra, and in some ways the definition of a Jain is somebody who knows Naukar mantra, who has been exposed to it maybe on a regular basis. All of us have heard that from the time we were babies. Parents would normally recite the Naukar mantra to the newborn child, and as soon as the child is able to, teach him and remind him to say the Naukar on a regular basis. Sorry, is there a problem with hearing?
No, I think we can hear very well. That's fine.
Okay. All right. Thanks. So every child born in a Jain family would have heard the Naukar mantra from childhood and been taught how to recite it and reminded on a regular basis that please say the Naukar mantra regularly, and particularly when you have any difficulties or when you're doing something auspicious or something that may involve some danger. So we've all been brought up with that idea and the faith that it is something that would protect us, is something that is a mantra, meaning that which can work miracles and improve our situation. So the power that we have all heard about is inherent in the Namaskar mantra. However, the faith with which we recite it and the understanding that we sort of incorporate within us or digest within us and then live by it is what really gives it the power. most of you also know the meaning of Naukar mantra in brief. We'll go into a bit more detail today. So let's start with the slides. I've only got a few slides today. I'll be reciting a couple of stories and we'll briefly look at the virtues of the 5 Parmestis that are remembered in Naukar mantra. Okay. I won't remind people of this. So sorry, this slide is from the previous one. Why do we need rituals from last week? So just read that as why do we need Naukar mantra. This is the Naukar mantra in English, and in brief the meaning in English, and on the left hand side in Barbud Lipi or the Hindi Lipi. Namo Arihantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Uvajjayanam, Namo Loye Sabbasahunam. Eso Pancha Namakaro Sabba Pavapanasana, Manglanancha Sabvesim Paramam Havai Mangalam. Let us quickly remind ourselves the key word in Namaskar mantra. It's called Naukar, meaning it's got 9 verses. Namaskar is because the key word there is Namo. So it's called Naukar mantra or Namaskar mantra or Namokar mantra. Naukar mantra is eternal. In all times, it has the same sound, the same meaning, the same verses. So the Naukar mantra doesn't change, but the other sutras that we learn and we recite during Chaitya and Pratikraman would change from different times and different Tirthankars' reigns. Namo Arihantanam is I bow down to the Arihants. Namo Siddhanam, I bow down to the Siddhs. Namo Ayariyanam, I bow down to the Acharyas. Namo Uvajjayanam, I bow down to the Upadhyayas. And Namo Loye Sattva Sahunam, I bow down to all the word used here, this is from Wikipedia, to all of the sages of the world. The meaning really is sadhu and sadhvi, and those who have the virtues of sadhus and sadhvis. So the way we understand the word sage may not always translate in the actual meaning of sadhus and sadhvis. So I would suggest that we use the word sadhu as described in the Jain literature, a Panch Mahavratari Nirgranth sadhu. It would be really what we are bowing down to, not anybody who may call themselves sadhus, but don't necessarily follow the vows of Nirgranth sadhu and sadhvi. So sadhu includes sadhus and sadhvis. Eso pancha namukaro. meaning that namaskar of these 5 important virtuous souls has the capacity to sabva pavapanasano, has the capacity to completely destroy all the sins of the person reciting it. Mangala anancha sabbesim padamam havai mangalam. And of all the auspicious mantras, it is indeed the foremost auspicious one, because it gives you mangal meaning moksha. So the mantra itself has the power to get rid of all our sins. And how can it do that? So that is something that we'll try and understand today. The key word, as I said at the beginning, is Namo. And let's explore that a bit more. If I were to ask the class as to what is the fundamental sin, or what is the most destructive fault that a person or any soul can have, and that which actually makes it very difficult for us to progress spiritually. I know we are not interactive, but let me just recite something that is probably fairly well known amongst those who have read Gujarati poems during school days or subsequently. Gujarati Hindi. It goes like this, just one verse. Daya dharma ka mool hai, paap mool abhiman. Tulsi, the poet is Tulsidas. Tulsi daya na chandiye, jab tak kat mein pran. Daya dharma ka mool hai. So that is fairly easy to understand. That kindness, generosity is the basis of religion or dharma. Here dharma is not used in the sense of religion as such, but dharma meaning all that is good and auspicious, and that is a virtue. So daya dharma ka mool hai. So it is the root of all that is good. That is kindness and virtue. So kindness is a virtue. Pap mool abhiman. The opposite of that, of all that is wrong and that actually puts the soul in a very downward spiral, is not as one would understand it normally. Say, if kindness is a virtue, then the opposite of kindness is cruelty. The opposite of compassion is cruelty or anger or violence. But here Tulsidas says, if the root of goodness is kindness, then the root of all that is evil, pap mool abhiman, is actually pride. And if you look deeply into most religions, pride as a vice is described quite in detail. And I think even in Christianity, pride is considered to be a very destructive force and a very important vice or very important fault to avoid or to get rid of. Pap mool abhiman, tulsi daya na chhandiye jab tak kat mein pran. So is saying that don't abandon your kindness as long as you live. So I had often wondered why the opposite of kindness, as we would understand it normally, would be cruelty or lack of compassion or violence. Why is that not stated, and why is pride stated as the root of all evil? And if you look at ourselves and look at everything that actually disturbs us, everything that makes us fight with people, everything that makes us angry, the root of everything wrong that we may be tempted to do lies in our egos, lies in how we perceive others as being not as important as ourselves. And if you look more deeply into the teachings of Jainism as a whole, the respect for all life, recognizing that every soul has the potential for reaching moksha, and that includes the soul of one sense, two sense, three sense, four sense, five sensed beings, and the equality of all souls is embedded in everything that Jainism is teaching. And that recognition comes from a level of complete sense of oneness with all living things in the universe. And that begins with abandoning our egos and our prides and thinking and understanding that we are no different fundamentally to any other soul, that the variations that we see in each other and the virtues and vices that we see in each other are the result of the karmas that that particular soul has acquired, and therefore are not the true reflection of the real nature of that soul. So in recognizing that, you want to understand those who are at a place where the purity of the soul has been achieved, where it's demonstrated, or those who are following the path. Therefore, the first word of Namaskar mantra is Namo, meaning I bow down to. You cannot bow down to anybody unless you recognize their virtue, you recognize your own lack of virtue or your own faults, and understand the difference between where you are and where the others are, and then in complete acceptance of that, with great humility, you actually bow down. And that very act or the understanding of the word Namo, meaning I am at a level where I am far from the virtuous Panch Parmeshti, the five Parmeshtis. So I start off with paying my respect and accepting myself at the state where I am and understanding the virtues of this great five Parmeshtis. So Namo is the key. I think Jyotiben or somebody sent a video to Sandeep Bhai about uh, Ratnasundar Suryasoji Maharaj Sahib, who in his one of his discourses was talking about somebody who was asking him to teach him some great mantra that would get rid of all his problems. And the person was asking him that, look, we know Naukar mantra from childhood, but can you give me something else? And Ratnasundar Surisuri Maharaj Sahib, in that brief video clip that was sent to me by Sandeep Bhai, basically is explaining that you don't really need anything, and the key to all miracles and the key to getting rid of your karma or your sins is Namo, meaning humility, destruction of your pride, destruction of your ego. And Namaskar mantra is the prime mantra for any difficulties, any problems that you might have. So he's basically saying that you don't need to learn anything else mantra-wise if you know and believe and have complete faith in Namaskar mantra. So that said about the word Namo, the word Namo comes in Namaskar mantra 6 times. So Namo Arihantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Votsayanam, Namo Loe Sattvasaunam, and then Eso Pancha Namukkaro. And when we go deeper into the meaning of Naukar mantra, at all those stages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there are different steps that are being sort of recited or explained. And there is a lot that is going on with Namaskar mantra. Those of you who may have attended a session that was done by Saurabh Bhai at Ekta Center a few weeks ago, on I think on a Saturday or a Sunday, where the methods of reciting Namaskar mantra and sitting in dhyan were actually described, and in brief, Naukar mantra's meaning and the deeper meaning was described in a bit more detail than what we're going to talk about today. Arihant. Namo Arihantanam. Ari, as most of you would know now, means the enemies. Hant means those who were destroyed. So those who have destroyed their enemies or have got rid of them are the Arihants. And here we need to understand that the enemies that are being talked about are the enemies of the soul. And the two greatest enemies that bring with them all other vices and the great difficulties that the soul faces throughout its journey from one life to another are rag and dvesh, meaning attachment and hatred. So the first verse is that I bow down to the Arihants, meaning those who have destroyed their inner enemies of rag and dvesh and therefore achieved the stage of being Arihant. Now here, when we talk about the 12 virtues of the Arihant, we are talking about the 12 virtues of the Arihants who became Arihants as a result of having been born or acquired the Tirthankar Nam Karma. The Arihants, ordinary Arihants, those who have got rid of their rag and dvesh and achieved Keval Gnan, so those are called Samanya Kevali, meaning those who have not actually become free of rag and dvesh, by virtue of having acquired Tirthankar Nam karma, but have got rid of all their karmas, uh, the four major karmas, and achieved Keval Gnan, and during the life that is left, they reside in their body until their lifespan finishes, and then they go to moksha. Those are what we call samanya kevali, meaning ordinary kevalis, but they also are arihants, meaning that they do not have any attachment, any hatred, so they do not have any rag and dvesh. So from that point of view, we recognize those arihants as well, but when they leave this body, they all become siddhs. So at the moment, here where we are, there is no arihant in this Bharat Kshetra. There is nobody with Keval Gnan in this Bharat Kshetra, but there are 20 arihants as we've described before elsewhere, meaning 20 Tirthankar Bhagwans, but a lot of other Samanya Kevalis in those places where the Arihant Bhagwans are. So we bow down to the Arihants. How is an Arihant different from a Samanya Kevali? So those who are born with Tirthankar Nam Karma, as soon as they achieve Keval Gnan, they have this 12 virtues by which everybody who is alive at the time or who sees them would recognize them. And those 12 virtues are what some of those are depicted in these pictures that you've seen of Samvasaran. We've got a replica of Samvasaran at Oswal Center. If you're going towards Oswal House from the temple, you see this Samvasaran, a small replica of that, and we also saw a picture of the Samvasaran temple in Palitana last week. Some of those 12 virtues are visible there. We won't go into the detail of the 12 virtues just now, but at some stage we should sort of explore them, because that is the fundamental, those are the fundamental virtues by which everybody around them would recognize that here is a Tirthankar Bhagwant Arihant who has everything around him that would distinguish him from all other uh, gods, and in terms of power, in terms of knowledge, in terms of how people are worshipping them, not just people, but devs, devis, and what devs and devis actually do for them, they do not do for any other ordinary person. And they do not generally do that for Samanya Kevali. They definitely do not create a Samvasaran, but they can create a simple lotus on which Samanya Kevali can sit and recite or give their sermons sitting on a lotus flower, which devs may have created, but they do that for some Samanya Kevalis sometimes. But that is not a rule. But for every Tirthankar Bhagwan, throughout the life that they would lead after achieving Keval Gnan, all these 12 virtues or Atishay would be part of their uh, image in people's mind wherever they go in those days. So for Bhagwan Mahavir, from the age of 42 to the age of 72 when he achieved Nirvana, for those 30 years while Bhagwan Mahavir was going around the land there from one place to other, all these things that are described in these 12 virtues would be part and parcel of what everybody would be actually seeing. So those are the 12 virtues of Arihants. The 8 virtues of the Siddh are the virtues of the soul which is free from all karmas. So those are the 8 virtues of the soul. So every Siddh Bhagwant who is the soul which is residing up in moksha, that is above Siddh Sila at the end of the universe, all Siddhs have these 8 virtues. The Acharya Maharaj are our great leaders who have been following the 5 great vows and the other 31 virtues, and those were described when we were talking about Guru Bhagwant, the 36 virtues in the Panchindiya Sutra that we recited briefly. The Arihants and the Siddh are Devs, meaning gods. Acharya, Upadhyay, and I made a mistake here. Sadhu, Sadhu. So please excuse that spelling mistake. It's Sadhu, Sadhu. Sadhvi, Sadhvi. So the Acharyas, Upadhyayas, and the Sadhu and Sadhvi are at the stage of Guru. So Dev, meaning God, divine beings, Devs, and Guru, meaning our teachers, Acharya, Upadhyaya, and Sadhu are at that stage. So the Acharyas have 36 virtues that are described. The Upadhyayas have 25 virtues. Upadhyayas are those who Up means to be near or to be in the presence of. Adhyay means to study or to learn. So in whose presence you learn the great scriptures are Upadhyayas, and they are said to have 25 virtues, and those 25 virtues are basically the names of the 11 Ang, 12 Upang, and one holy book called Charan Sitri and Karana Sitri. So these are those who have studied this 25 great sastras and who then teach this to others are at the stage of Upadhyay. The term that is also used that you may have heard elsewhere is called Panyas or Gani. They are the people we remember when we talk about Namo Uvadsayanam. And Namo Loe Savvasahunam, meaning all those who are following the path as prescribed by the Arihants of a sadhu and a sadhvi, and who have 27 virtues, I bow down to them. Namaskar mantra has got 9 pads, meaning 9 separate lines, but the 8th and the 9th are read as one. So there's the Namaskar mantra has got 8 sampadas. So that which is joined together, Mangalanancha Savesim Padmam Havai Mangalam, that is a sampada, and all the other 7 lines are also pad and sampada. So 9 pads and 8 sampadas. So briefly, a couple of stories. We're illustrating one story here, and we'll come to that in a minute. I think we've got about another 25 minutes. So let me just go through some more details. If you go back to the 12 virtues of the Arihants, those of you who remember the picture of Samvasaran that I was talking about earlier, and the picture that we saw of the Samvasaran temple last week, let's just describe what you actually see within that. So there is at the center a large tree which is in proportion to the size of the body of the Tirthankar Bhagwan, and that tree is an Ashok Vruksh. The other name for that is Asopalav. It is 12 times the size of the body of the Tirthankar Bhagwan. So those of you who have probably heard before, Mahavir Bhagwan's body size was Sat Hath, meaning I'm not sure exactly how that translates in our current units of measures that we say. Hath is slightly longer than a foot. So Sat Hath meaning 7 haths. Parshanath Bhagwan was taller, Nimrod Bhagwan was taller still, and if you go backwards, um, Rishabdev Bhagwan's body was 500 Dhanush, which is a very different measure of length, and it's quite complicated in terms of how those measurements are actually described. We won't go into the details of that. So the Ashok Vruksh is 12 times the size of the body of the Tirthankar Bhagwan at that time. Then the next virtue, so these are called 8 Pratiharyas and then 4 Atishays. So 8 and 4, 12. The second Pratiharya is Sur Pushprushti, meaning around the Samvasaran, the Devs will pour down very scented, beautiful flowers in various colors in an area around the Samvasaran. The third Pratiharya is Divya Dhvani. Divya Dhvani is the music that is accompanying the words that Bhagwan is actually speaking when he is preaching to the audience. And this accompaniment of music is produced by the Devs, and the Tirthankar Bhagwan always recites, they always recite their sermons in the rag Malkosh. Malkosh, those of you who know classical Indian music would know that Malkosh is considered to be the king of all rags, and it is the most beautiful and deeply peaceful rag that you can hear. So Bhagwan's Deshna or Bhagwan's uh, every time he speaks to preach people, it's always in Rag Malkosh. The fourth Pratiharya is Chamar. That is when you see this in the temple as well, that there is a Dev standing with that whisk with a handle, white colored whisk, that's called a chamar. The fifth Pratiharya is Asan, on which the Tirthankar Bhagwan sits while he is uh, giving the uh, sermons. Bhamanda is the shiny, sort of reflective kind of mirror that produces a kind of a halo behind Bhagwan, uh, and that is created by the Devs as well. Dundube is a special instrument that again, while Bhagwan is in the Samvasaran, the Devs actually play that instrument. It's a musical instrument that has a very sweet sound. And Chhatra is the wherever Bhagwan walks, there is a chhatra is like an umbrella that is specially created, and that accompanies Bhagwan wherever he goes. And then there are the four Atishays. So these are the eight Pratiharya, and the four Atishays are Apaya Gamam, Apaya Pa Gama Atishay. Wherever the Tirthankar Bhagwans are moving, in a distance of 125 yojans, meaning on the four directions, 25 yojans each, and upwards, skywards, and downwards, 25 each. In that region, everybody experiences peace, generally good health. Epidemics would not occur in that region while the Tirthankar Bhagwan is there, and you would not have any famine in that region while the Tirthankar Bhagwan is around. So in that distance of 100 yojans all around and 25 yojans up and down, all the difficulties or natural calamities would not happen. So that is the power of Tirthankar Bhagwan. The second Atishay is Gnan Atishay, meaning Tirthankar Bhagwan has got Keval Gnan, meaning total omniscience. So everything of everything is known from past, present, and future. The third Atisay is Puja Atisay, meaning all devs, devis, Indra, men, women, they are all would be worshipping Tirthankar Bhagwan, so that is called Puja Atishay. And the fourth Atishay is Vachana Atishay. Tirthankar Bhagwan's speech has got 35 virtues, which means one of them is that it is in Rag Malkosh, it is very sweet, and just listening to it without even understanding anything would be so peaceful and so wonderful that there are stories of people having stopped doing what they were and completely forgetting all their pains, just listening to Bhagwan's voice. It also is understood by all people who are present there at their own level and in their own language. So that is called Vachana Atisai. And all people from whichever background, whatever language they speak, would understand what Bhagwan is saying in their own language. So the animals would also understand and gain something useful. So as you have seen in the picture of the Samvasaran, the middle circle is occupied by animals, wild and domesticated, who come to that Samvasaran. So these are the 12 virtues of Aryan Bhagwan. At some stage in the future, we will talk about the virtues of Siddh, Acharya Upadhyaya and Sadhu in greater detail. Here, what is illustrated is the story of Bhagwan Parshvanath and Kamat Tapas, and when they meet for the first time in that particular life. The story goes that once when Bhagwan Parshvanath was still a householder as a prince, he hears and sees people going in droves outside the town, and he wonders and asks his uh, soldiers or servants that what is happening. So he knows with his Audignan, the story goes that he asks and is told that there is a tapas who is performing severe penance, and everybody is going to see him, bow down to him because he is a great tapas. So people said that what he is doing is in this extreme heat of Chaitra, meaning the month of March when it's very hot in India. He is sitting in front of a great fire and performing penance. So he is actually exposing his body to extreme heat and performing some rituals, and people are so impressed by what he's been doing that they are all going there to pay respects to him. So Bhagwan Parshvanath goes along with his men, and when he reaches there, he sees what's happening, and also with his Audignan, with the extrasensory knowledge that he has, he sees that in the logs that are being burnt in the fire, one of the logs in the hollow of that log has got a couple of snakes who are trapped inside those log of wood and are being burned alive while that fire is raging. So with compassion and kindness, he tells Kamat Tapas that what you are doing is filled with violence, and you cannot actually achieve liberation by performing any kinds of penance that does not have kindness and respect for other life and care for other life embedded in that ritual. And what you're doing now is actually, what you don't know is that there are snakes trapped in that log of wood. And he tells his men that can you please remove that log of wood and open it up gently so without harming the snakes which are inside. And his men remove that log of wood, open up the lay it open, and to everybody's amazement, those who didn't know, obviously they couldn't see the snakes. Two snakes emerge from that, but they have already been so badly burned that they do not really have much life left in them and nothing that could be done. So Bhagwan Parshvanath then recites the Naukar mantra, and so that the snakes can hear it clearly, and the snakes die in peace, and The soul that is occupying of the two snakes is born as the Ranendra and Padmavati that we worship now, and they then become devs and devis of Bhagwan Parshanath. This Tapas Kamat, who felt quite insulted that he was actually taught a lesson and corrected about his practices by an ordinary prince, as he thought, and he felt very insulted and quite angry at Bhagwan Parshanath, also because he was carrying the enmity with him over several lifetimes. This anger towards Bhagwan Parshanath's soul, their relationship had been soured many lifetimes ago, and he continues his penance with this hatred in his mind and ends his life, and he is born as a Yaksh, who then later on comes and disturbs Bhagwan Parshanath, and a lot of you have seen the pictures of that when he comes to uh, try and cause trouble and starts raining uh, heavily, and Ranendra and Padmavati come and support Bhagwan Parshanath. And the verse that we recite in uh, describing the virtues of Bhagwan Parshanath mentions this particular event. It goes like this: Kamate Dharanendra cha sochitam karma kurvati prabhustulya manovrutti parshanath sriyestuvaha. Kamat and Dharanendra. Dharanendra is the Dev. Sochitam karma kurvati. They both do what they think is best and they want to do themselves. So Kamat is troubling Bhagwan Parshanath. He is trying to create a lot of pain and dangerous situations for Bhagwan Parshanath, and Dharanendra is protecting him from that. But Bhagwan Parshanath is viewing both of them in exactly the same way. Sochitam karma kurti prabhustulya manovrutti. So in his mind, there is no difference between Dharanendra and Kamat. So he's recognizing both of them as their divine selves, as he recognizes all other souls. But the fact that one is helping and the one is actually dangerously trying to do him harm, he does not take account of that at all. But here, listening to Namkar mantra, the souls of these two snakes actually achieve peace and in their next lives become Dev and Devi. The other story that I wanted to talk about is something that a lot of you may have heard as children. Amar Kumar is a well-known story, and it is something that children actually love. There is a very good animated YouTube video on the story of Amar Kumar in Hindi. So, and it's illustrated with beautiful pictures as well. It's a YouTube, but it's mainly audio, and there are a few pictures illustrating the story, but it's not actually uh, like a cartoon movie. But it's worth looking at that. If you just type in Amar Kumar on YouTube, you will actually get that story. So Amar Kumar story happens around the time of Bhagwan Mahavir, and in the city of Rajguri in the state of Magad, whose king was King Shrenik. Before King Shrenik became a Jain and he came in contact with Anathi Muni and Bhagwan Mahavir, he was trying to build a palace with great effort, but the palace would actually fall down every time it was erected to a certain stage, and they tried for a very long time to try and get that palace built properly. And as was normal during that time, the king calls his ministers and his advisors, and especially those who specialized in the uh, Jyotish Shastra and science of prediction, and he asked them, why is what I'm building falling down every time? And one of the advisors, the Brahmins, said that there is a particular yaksh who is probably not happy with you building this, and he will be calmed down and he will stop harassing you if you sacrifice somebody who has the virtues and what is called 32 lakshan, meaning great depiction on his body of being somebody who is very auspicious. So the king does not think twice at that time. So this is the stage at which he hasn't actually been thinking about what is right and what is wrong. And he says, yeah, okay, let me uh, find somebody who has got those 32 lakshan or 32 virtues, and we will sacrifice him. So you make the preparation. And he sends his men around the city and with a message that anybody who is willing to give their one of their children or whoever who has got 32 great lakshan or virtues on his body, and I will give that person a lot of money and a lot of gold. And his men go around the city making this announcement everywhere so people hear and see if there is somebody who can actually give them a person for the sacrifice. So there was a very poor Brahmin in the city living with his wife and 4 children, and their youngest son, called Amar Kumar, had the virtues that the king was seeking, and he was not particularly liked by his mother. And his mother heard the announcement from the king's men and decided that she didn't really want this particular son, and why not sell him to the king? And it doesn't matter if he's sacrificed in the sacrificial fire, at least she will earn the gold that the king had promised. So she brought him out and said, look here, my son has got 32 virtues that the king wants. Give me the gold and take him away. And Amar Kumar kept on weeping, begging from his mom and his father and everybody else in the village, please don't send me, please don't send me. I don't want to die, I don't want to be killed. So he's quite a young boy. But then when nobody listens and his mother, who was really hated him, sells him anyway, he's taken to this sacrificial fire and he's set there. By this time, Amar Kumar has been thinking of how he can get some help, and he calms his mind down and remembers what he's been taught, that whenever you are in any difficulty, please recite the Naukar mantra. And he sits there and calming his mind completely, forgetting about what the commotion that's going on around him, sitting in this seat in the middle where the Brahmins are actually throwing, uh, created a fire and are making it hotter and hotter, and throwing things. And as they are reciting, and Amar Kumar is sitting there peacefully with his eyes closed and reciting the Naukar mantra, suddenly the fire gets extinguished. The king is thrown down from his uh, throne and he starts bleeding. All that was going on around them is all suddenly destroyed, and Amar Kumar's funeral pyre becomes a big throne on which he's sitting, and people suddenly realize that some miracle has happened. So the devs who have been watching from above understand the deep faith with which Amar Kumar is reciting Naukar mantra and decide to come and help him. And so that was the power of Namaskar mantra. And then when everybody realizes what has happened, the king says, look, you are a much greater man than I am. I don't deserve this kingdom. You take my kingdom. And Amar Kumar says, I have no use for that. And I don't really want to stay in my family or in my household because of what's been going on. The real path for me is to become an ascetic. And he takes Diksha and becomes a monk. The story goes that his mother does not forget the hatred that she had, and then decides now that Amar Kumar has been saved, the king actually didn't fulfill his what he had decided to sacrifice. So Amar Kumar has not been sacrificed. So maybe the king will come back and send his men to take the gold that he had given me back from me. So if that happens, and she starts again thinking in her mind that I must go and kill Amar Kumar, and she finds where he is standing in penance as a monk, and she actually goes there and kills him with a knife. So if you look up the story, there are pictures of this particular story in various different stages, um, and there used to be very beautiful pictures of this story in books that we used to read as children. Uh, so Amar Kumar is killed by his own mother, and his soul then goes to Devlok. And the story goes that after he finishes his life in the Devlok, he will go to Mahavidya Kshetra in his next life and achieve Nirvana or Keval Gnan and go to Moksha in that next life. So he is currently in a Devlok. But his mother, after having killed a monk, her own son, is walking away through the jungle, and a tiger comes by, attacks her, and kills her as well. And from there, she goes down to the sixth hell, and that's where she is now. And the story goes that she'll spend a long time uh, going from different lives in great pain and suffering. So, again, this story illustrates the power of Namaskar mantra and how, when it is recited with faith, what benefit it brings. Some of us may have doubts about the power of words and the power of what uh, and the whole science of mantra, but the science of the arrangement of the words, the various special features that are in those words, and there are lots of other mantras, but Namaskar mantra is the eternal, the greatest mantra. And praying that all of you may remember that, and there is a huge amount of literature on Namaskar mantra, and if you were to sort of go through some of that, we could spend several weeks just listening to the depth of meaning in the Namaskar mantra. But everything that is being recited in Samaro Mantra Balo Namaskar is backed by the knowledge that you will find in the books that are written by Navkar on Naukar Mantra by great Sadhu Bhagwans, and we can talk about that at some time in the future. Before I end, I just wanted to say that I've been discussing with Sandeep Bhai about the in-person sessions that we were talking about, and he's looking into a date, and hopefully we'll have a date when we can meet all together live, either at Oswal Center or Ekta Center, depending on what Sandeep Bhai can find and decides. So we are in discussion about that. Next week's class is actually a recap of everything that we've learned. What I will try and do next week is try and summarize and go back to some of the basic things about what dharma and religion is about and what we have discussed so far, and hopefully bring in some new topics in preparation for the next stage of our class. So next week, the title of the lesson is Recap and Revision of all we have learned. So if there are lots of questions, please send them. You all have my email, Google mail address. You can also send the questions to Sandeep Bhai, and we'll try and collect them and maybe try and make it interactive. If there are only about 40-50 people, then I think Zoom may allow it if our Zoom team thinks that that is okay. I ask for forgiveness for anything that I have said that may be that is against the teachings of the great Tirthankars. Ichchami Dukadam. Sarvamangalamangalyam Sarvakalyana Karanam Pradhanam Sarvadharmanam Jainam Jeti Sasanam. I'll end here, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them. Thank you. Any questions, Ketan Bhai?
I don't have any questions. Let me just ask Gavit, do you have any questions sent to
There
you?
is a few questions that have come through to me.
Yeah.
I will just try and take one of them. Which is more powerful, the Naukar mantra or the Logos? Some people say when they know the Logos, they start reciting this over the Naukar mantra. So
The Naukar mantra is the essential eternal mantra. If you're talking about the difference, the Naukar mantra is actually teaching us about respecting and recognizing the virtues of all the five Parmestis, and it is eternal. The Loga Sutra is a stuti of all the 24 Tirthankars of this particular Chovisi or time cycle that we are living in. But Naukar mantra would be recited, or it represents all Tirthankar Bhagwans, for it is we are bowing down to all Tirthankars that are alive currently, that have been alive in the past, that were there or they will be there in the future. The same thing goes for Siddhanam, Ayaryanam, Uvajjayanam, and all sadhus and Sadhvi Maharaj. So from that point of view, Naukar mantra is much more greatly inclusive. At the core of the Naukar mantra is Namaskar, meaning bowing down to, and gradually as we get deeper into performing the dhyan with Naukar mantra, the level to which our ego and our pride actually gets dissolved has the power of what it says in the Nokar mantra Sabva Pavapana Sano Manglanancha Sabesim Padvam Hoy Manglam. So Locus is just reciting, I mean, all of them are powerful. Every sutra that we recite during Pratikraman and Samaik has the power to actually get rid of all our karmas. There is this particular line in the Siddhanam Buddhanam Sutra which says, Iko vinamukaro jinavara vasa savadmanasa sansar sagarao tare naramma narimba. Iko vinamukaro meaning only one namaskar. Iko vinamukaro jinavara vasa savadmanasa. One namaskar to Bhagwan Mahavir, Vardhaman, has the capacity or is capable of helping us navigate the ocean of life and death. And there are similar statements in all our sutras. Some of us may have heard the story of Ati Muktak Muni, who at a very young age became a monk, and while he was in a mood to play with during the rainy season by floating his patra, meaning in which they go and the munis go and get food from different households, he sees a pond of water that is collected during the rainy season, and other children are floating their boats and various things to see how the things float. He puts his patra in the water and is enjoying the scene of that floating. So he's by playing like any young child. So Guru Gautam passes by and looks at the scene and says, look, this is not something that we as monks would do, because we have taken the vow to protect all life from any harm. And when you are here putting your patra in this, my battery is going to go down in a minute, but I'll end. My patra is going to actually harming a lot of life in this water, so you shouldn't do that. So Ati Muktak Muni starts reciting the Iryavaya Sutra, which is describing all those things that one can harm while walking from one place to another. And in that recital, he gets so deep into meditation and achieves a state of Sukla Dhyan and achieves Keval Dhyan. So even the Iryavaya Sutra has the power to take you to moksha. So all our sutras have the power. If you look at what is universal, Naukar mantra, and in all times, is definitely more than Loga Sutra. But all of them are powerful. The power comes from within, the power comes from our faith, the power comes from how we recite it, and it is also said that every word, every letter has actually got the power of a mantra. And there is a story about somebody called Hans who is bitten by a snake, and he is dying, sitting in his mother's lap, and the mother keeps on reciting the word Hans, 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 because he's extremely disturbed and sad by the fact that her son is dying of a snake bite. And in her devotion and in the intensity with which she's actually reciting these words, which she doesn't know are mantras, but his poison from the snake actually wears off, because Hans, there is part of that word Hans, which is the Bij mantra for getting rid of poison from a snake. So there is a whole science called mantra science where a lot of these things would be described. And there are experts at this. There are some scholars who have written a book on Osagaram Stotra, who is a great scholar of in of mantra science. So actually that book is, I've forgotten the name of the author, but he has written other books on the mantra science. So Jainism also says that every word can be a mantra, but there is nothing like Naukar mantra. So briefly, we describe that. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Ajit Bhai. There is two more questions.
Yeah.
One is, it's not a question, it's more about if we can have a list of the Yaksh and Yakshinis or Shashan Devi Devta for each 24 Tirthankars. If
Okay.
that is at all possible, if you can email them out to us, that
Okay.
would be great.
Okay.
There is another long question which I can't make very much sense of, but I will just say that to you.
Yeah.
If there were only Tirthankars and then they gave life on earth a meaning through human form, are we all connected in terms of related in some way to each other? I'm not exactly sure what
Okay.
that means, but yeah, that is a question.
So just coming to that statement, are we related to each other? If you look at our journey as souls, it started an infinite time ago. So there was no beginning. So we've been around, moving from one life to another for an infinite amount of time. And during that time, until we reach a stage when we are what is called in our last cycle, called Charam Avarth. So the last cycle, we would have been going around the whole universe, and it is not unimaginable that we have come in contact with almost every living thing, and that is an infinite number. At some stage or other, and it is not also unimaginable that most, if not all, of the people that we actually encounter during our lifetime here are people that we have encountered somehow or the other in the past and are quite likely to come in contact with them sometime in the future in our other lives. So if you look at the stories of the different people and their relationships, so for example, in Bhagwan Mahavir's life, we hear a story that he sends Guru Gautam to visit a farmer and says, why go to him and teach him about religion. And uh, and Guru Gautam used to just do whatever Bhagwan Mahavir said without questioning. So he goes to this farmer, and Guru Gautam was a great teacher and extremely powerful. And he talks to this farmer about life and the future and the soul and convinces him that his life and his future would be much better if he became a monk. And the farmer agrees. He leaves his farm and everything behind him and comes with Guru Gautam and asks him, where are you taking me uh, to initiate me in this particular life that you just described? And I'm willing to join you because I agree and I understand what you're telling me, and I have complete faith in what you're saying to me. So this farmer goes along with Guru Gautam, and Guru Gautam tells him that we are going to my Guru who will give you Diksha, who will actually initiate you in this path. So as soon as this farmer sees Bhagwan Mahavir in Samvasaran, and Guru Gautam tells him that that is my Guru there, the farmer says that if he is your Guru, then I want no part of this. And he says he takes an immediate dislike to Bhagwan Mahavir. And he sees him and then goes back, runs away, goes back to his old life. So Bhagwan Mahavir obviously knew the whole sequence of events as would happen, but Guru Gautam is a bit puzzled. He says, what has just happened? This man was completely convinced and he had understood everything I had said. He's come here, he's seen Bhagwan Mahavir, and he's run away because he just somehow does not like Bhagwan Mahavir. So Bhagwan Mahavir says he does not like me because when my soul was Triprusht Vasudev, this farmer's soul was a great lion, and that great lion was creating a lot of difficulties for people, and I was tasked with getting rid of that lion. I went to the jungle with you as my charioteer, and
It looks like we might have lost Ajit Pai due to his power going off. But I think we will bring this session to an end now. And if you have any questions, please send them to Shandip Pai. The email address is the email that you would have got. We'll bring this session to an end now. Thank you.
sorry, I got cut off. My battery went down. Can you hear me? Kavit, am I back?
I brought the session to an end.
Oh, okay, sorry. All right. No, I thought my laptop was plugged in. Somehow